Welcome in to the EnergyTech podcast presented by OpSite Energy. And today we have an exciting show as I welcome in someone who is near and dear to my heart. Navneet Behl joins us today to discuss trends and innovations in the energy industry. Sorry, Nav, welcome in. How you been?
Good. Good to see you, Jeff. It's been an exciting 2024, and I wish everyone a happy new year, and looking forward to 2025.
Going to be a great year. Really excited about 2025. So for those of you who may not know Nav, I want to introduce him as the guest. He is currently the Chief Operating Officer at CNX Resources. And his role at CNX is I would say, more than what most chief operating officers do, because he is a technical guy. He is in the stack of digital transformation. He's in the stack of drilling, completions, production, midstream, engineering, and everything in between. And I do have a really long history in NAV, going back to, I believe it was 2008. I was actually a lease operator for a company called EOG Resources there in the Barnett Shale. I'd come there from another company called Texas Maximum Production, where we focused on urban flowbacks. But one of the things I was doing there at EOG was pumping wells and doing, shooting fluid levels, doing kind of like artificial lift tech type stuff. And I found out a lot of our wells were communicating nav, right? So it was, hey, we had a lot, the Ellenberger sat just below the Barnett Shale. If you fracked a little too hard, you had a lot of communication. You had a lot of water come back, produce water, heavy water, like 10-pound water, something crazy. And if you fracked a little light, the well wasn't worth crap. So we were in the Barnett West extension at the time, which is, the Barnett East was the prolific wells. And as you kind of move west, the formation kind of gets, it's a lot less thick, and it also kind of moves around a little bit. So landing a bit and completing wells in that zone was very, very difficult for any operator, but really EOG was the only one doing it. But as a part of my time there as a lease operator, I discovered, hey man, I can actually make more money on these wells by shutting a few of them in. And it was kind of like, I had maybe a 4-well pad, and let's say each well is producing on average $1 million a day. That put us at $4 million, a day, but it also brought in 4,000 barrels of water. So with playing with those configurations back then, I was able to find like maybe I can shut this well in right here, and maybe I'm only producing 3.3 million. Again, I didn't lose a whole million because of the communication, but I'm producing so much less water. From a financial perspective. It was a win-win. So I was kind of stuck in a situation, kind of brought this up to my boss. He didn't really, consider it a whole lot. Took it to his boss. He didn't consider it. And then here, lo and behold, Nav walks in the door one day for a safety meeting because they had just moved him over to the production side of the business from completions. And I was like, I think this is the guy I want to get this in front of. So I took it to Nav, he said, this is great, feedback, blah, 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 blah. I think maybe a month later, there was a job that come up, and it was related to operating some water disposal wells. And, I was front line for that job, I believe. Talked to my boss. We kind of had it all worked out. And then at the last second, it kind of like went away. And I was like, well, what the hell? What happened here? And my boss at the time was like, well, Navneet, killed it. And I was like, well, shit, I thought we were on good terms, blah, 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 right? So it wasn't about a month later, Nav kind of plucked me out of that environment, put me into another environment, and kind of started our relationship down this course. And I've had the pleasure of working in and around Nav since then. He's always been, right in our department, but we worked together at several different companies, and it was a great reunion this year in 2024 to get back with you and do a lot. So do you remember anything back from those old days, the early times of the Barnett Shale?
Absolutely. I remember almost everything of it because Barnett Shale was the first shale play that that happened, especially, when George Mitchell started it up in Denton County.
Right.
And then when I was with Schlumberger, I was designing a well for an operator where they wanted to drill under horizontal well under a golf course. And that's when I first knew about Barnett Shale and started reading up more on it, got intrigued, and then finally started working for EOG Resources. And we came into the acreage that was in Johnson County, and which was really hard to make it work. So working for EOG since 2005, so it took us quite some time to kind of figure that Johnson County, Barnett Shale play out, just because, like you were saying, Ellenberger's right below it, so you have to be really pinpointing the frac. And once we figured Johnson County out, then I was moved over to the team, which was to figure out how to make the extension counties work.
Right.
All the way from Jack County down to Erath County and over to
Stephenville, my hometown. Here we go. Cowboy capital of the world. Yeah. So those of you who don't know Nav, it's not Barnett where he was just, breaking ground and doing things that no one else had done in the world. In fact, I think you were part of the first commercial well ever drilled in the United States, in the Shale well, that was profitable.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, there's a story around, one of the greatest CEOs of all time in this space, Mark Papa, kind of put a deadline on you. Can you share anything around that?
Yeah, like Mark Papa came in and he said that he needed these wells, especially on the oil play side, in which was later to become Eagle Ford, right? One of the biggest oil plays in the world. And he gave us a deadline of we had to get everything done by January of 2010 to kind of announce the play.
Right.
And I was just coming out of Barnett Shale play, trying to figure out Eagle Ford oil play, which was a really tight carbonate, not a shale. But at that point, every technical expert from Exxon and Chevron said it was impossible to extract oil from shales, and that was the challenge for us. And I was told that, okay, go figure it out. If not, your replacement will figure it out for us.
I got you. So, I honestly tell people this every now and then, that this guy across from me should have won a Nobel Peace Prize back in 2005, 2006 by unlocking the potential of American shale, not just for the U.S., but also any kind of shale play in the world. But, going back to those days, the Barnett, natural gas was basically coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Any kind of little hiccup in the Gulf, hurricane, you name it, the price of gas would go crazy. Even back when the shale was fully formed, some of those hurricanes that come through, you'd see $13, $14 gas at Henry, not let alone what you see up in the Northeast. But I do credit him with that, guys, and so he is a wealth of knowledge, and now you kind of can understand why I'm excited to have him on the show today and be back working in and around Navneet, as he's also a part of the OpSite board and brings a ton of credibility, if nothing else, but a ton of insight, ton of connections, and just a masterful mind. So really the show today, Nav, is about we're going to reflect a little bit on the industry evolution, maybe not so much as far as like what OpSite is kind of more concerned on from a remote operations, AI integration, all that sort of stuff on the operations side. But let me ask you this, going back to when we met, or even earlier, 2005, 2008 timeframe, how do you think the energy industry has evolved since then?
Energy industry has grown quite a bit because before Barnett Shale and all the shale revolution happened, majority of the wells drilled in the United States and probably the world were vertical wells. And the only horizontal wells that were drilled were probably in Austin chalk, or like tight chalk, fractured chalk formation. And shale revolution, which is basically a basin-centric rock, where you can start drilling these wells, horizontal wells, and then lay them kind of side by side because the rock is contiguous, and it was formed, like in different periods, geological periods over, and it was a kind of worldwide event. Second, third transgressive sequences. And so they extend for millions and millions of acres. So we could take the drilling of these wells into kind of a factory mode once you have figured out,
Henry Ford mode.
Yeah, Henry Ford mode.
Right, who can afford to scale, right? That's who's going to win that game.
Yeah, a scale, and then second was speed. So once you figured out the initial play, then you could just go scale up pretty fast. For example, early in EOG, while we were trying to figure out the shales in the first couple of years, we were drilling about 50 wells a year or so. And then as we figured it out, EOG was able to take it up to almost drilling like 400 wells a year.
Yeah, I think in a previous episode we mentioned, I think the year 2014 specifically, of course, WTI was trading like 110 plus St. James was 120, 125. And even the oil that got down from the Bakken via EOG's, rail system was getting that uplift when everyone in the Bakken was just getting murdered. So being able to scale that, do you see that as like, the biggest advantage that EOG had during that time period when they kind of tripled their stock, split it a couple times as well and made all of us a bunch of money?
I think one of the key things with EOG was they had once they mapped the play out and they knew the extent of it, then they had the ability to scale because of their acreage position.
Right.
It's almost like real estate. It's location, 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 and how much acreage you have. And EOG had both really good location based on the mapping, and and then ability to kind of plan foresight, right? The executive management in EOG, Mark Papa and Gary Thomas, they knew what they wanted to scale up to, and they had planned that like almost 2 years ahead of time.
Right.
And that ability to kind of plan ahead, put all the resources in, and have confidence in the team to execute, kind of led to that kind of scale up pretty fast.
And so, yeah, I noticed, the trend with EOG is they entered, Barnett, Johnson County acreage, the Bakken, all the 5 or 6 acres, counties there in Texas for Eagle Ford, and even as the second bone, third bone, everything else was coming online in West Texas. They always seem to have premier acreage, at least that's what they call it. But as you look at IPs, that that acreage was premier. So, I'm assuming there's a big database, and what was it that EOG was doing, pre-2010 that no one else was, when they were saying, hey, we're just cherry picking the best 500,000 acres, and now we're going to go Henry Ford assembly line this thing for the next 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember listening to Mark Papa in 2004 in one of the conferences, where he said like EOG wasn't too interested in acquisitions and they wanted to grow organically by the drill bit.
Right.
And that was a really different strategy, and they were like very true to it. And they had been working hard on growing organically till the shale revolution showed up over there, and that once they started getting into all the different shale plays, which was their key strategy for organic growth, they were able to develop all the different plays. Were able to put their footprint on majority of the shale plays, because I remember EOG was involved in from all the way up in Bakken and Horn River Basin down to Vaca Muerta, right? So they've been involved in almost all the shale plays in the world, and they had the practice or technology development like early on,
right,
with Barnett.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, to kind of summarize that segment, it's you're saying that one, first mover advantage. I'm assuming using really good data.
Yeah.
2 is being able to scale that, and EOG's wasn't the only winner here. Companies like Pioneer, Devon. There was also very others that really did this very well at scale, and that I'd sit there and watch them turn on a 10-well pad, and here's 150 million in gas in the Barnett. Like, that's a big deal. Months in the making. As someone on the operations side, it's just, oh, okay, cool. I got new gas, and these wells aren't going to go down for no reason, and I don't have to mess with artificial lift. We were excited about those things, other than just getting rid of water. But as we look forward, 2025 on, kind of using your crystal ball, so to speak, like, what do you see as the biggest trends shaping the energy industry right now and then in the next 5 years?
Yeah. So one of the key before I answer that question, let me go back a little bit. When all these different basins were being explored for shale play, I think Range Resources, CNX, were in the Appalachia Basin, and they had the first mover advantage, and they were able to crack the code for Marcellus here pretty early.
Right.
And so they were able to develop this. And the reason I bring that up is the development in Appalachia Basin based on the length of the lateral that can be drilled is quite different than what it was in Texas or
yeah. So can you give
Colorado.
some context there? So what would your average foot treated lateral be in the Barnett versus a Utica or Marcellus well today?
Yeah. So in Barnett and majority of the land in Texas is by sections, right, which is 1 mile square by 1 mile square. So majority of time when the land team is leasing the land, they have few sections owned by the operators, and when we build the units, it was usually like a section unit, and so your lateral length at that point in time was limited to somewhere between 5,000 feet to maybe like 6,000-7,000 feet.
Right.
But in Appalachia, like Appalachia lease acreage, they could drill longer laterals. So they early on, were using the RSS tool. They could drill these wells faster. They were drilling almost mile a day. I think SCNX was one of the key companies that got there, and the second part is they could drill longer, right? So they went from like 5,000 to almost 10,000 feet to 12,000 feet to 16, and now in Appalachia Basin, the wells are like over, pretty close to above like 20,000 feet.
Right. That's wild.
Yeah. So operationally, execution wise, all the shallower plays have been found. So the next frontier for shales is deeper play, international plays, where there'll be a need to drill extended reach laterals. So in my mind, shales and the oil and gas industry will go towards ERDC, which means like extended reach drilling and completions.
Right.
So that is the key future, and that's where CNX is pioneering with its Utica play, which is almost 13,500 feet deep, and the wells are like 15,000 foot laterals, so almost 27 to 30,000 feet.
Right. That's
measured
wild.
depth.
So do you in your mind is there like a definite stopping point? Is it 5 miles, 3 miles? Like, what can you do with current drilling technology? Are you right up against the doorstep of something bigger, or are we kind of capped out there? Like, what do you expect to see there?
So to answer that question, let's divide that into two portions. Like the one portion is what we can do on a factory mode, right? So at the factory mode these days, I think we are pretty close to the technical limit, like how far it can go because of tool failures that we have. And second would be the experimental stage, where one company can go develop that tools with service companies and everyone else to be able to drill longer laterals.
Right. At what cost, though? Right?
At what cost, right?
Yeah.
So then during the development or early development of these tools, the wells might not be as economic, and as the tool gets cheaper and more reliable, then I think that might be able to extend it.
So you got to have some patience. It's more of a long game.
Long game.
And I think you see some shale operators out there who just don't quite have the patience to get into full assembly line mode. And I've seen that in my career as well. And it's just like, man, you're right on the cusp of something great. Like, one breakthrough in completions, one extra stage here, maybe a different proppant, you name it. Now we've got a well that makes a ton of money versus one that's a dry hole or financially a dry hole.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, going back to the trends going forward, some of the things that kind of come to my mind are things like, decarbonization has been a big piece. Maybe that's not as big a deal now with the new administration coming in. At least it'll be ESG and things like that, I think, are kind of losing their luster. Of course, technology adoption, like you mentioned, in every aspect of everything we do in the industry and even in our personal lives is going to be a key player. We can say that for sure. Up here, you got a regulatory landscape that looks a lot different than what I'm used to in Texas, but having spent a year or so in Appalachia, it's a beautiful place. I understand what they're trying to protect, and it's just a different mindset when it comes to building new things. You don't see tons of cranes downtown Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's a very beautiful city. I love spending time there. I spent a lot of time there this weekend with my family, but it's not the same as driving through Austin, Texas, where you see 75 cranes, building buildings nonstop for the last couple decades. And then the last piece, is kind of like sustainability. But to me, technology drives all the others, and it's a big piece of sustainability. It's a big piece of decarb. It's a big piece of the regulatory landscape. So do you agree with that technology is kind of like we're on the last, chess piece or board piece here to kind of get a 10x for our money when it comes to machine learning, AI? Do you see that kind of penetrating your sector further upstream, like on drilling and completions, if it hasn't already?
Yeah, definitely. So to answer your question on technology, application to oil and gas. So technology is kind of like to me is kind of fabric of the universe, right? So as more technology is discovered, it gets used by everyone.
Right.
For example, if you go early on, the GPS technology was developed by the U.S. Defense Forces, right? It was a DoD kind of a test,
Right.
and it was only used in military applications. But then, as the technology matured, as the world matured on being able to produce that technology for a lower unit cost, then now it's on everyone's cell phone.
Right.
It's on everyone's watch.
Yeah.
Right. Like
It's everywhere.
it's everywhere.
If something doesn't happen, it's strange, right? You
Yeah.
don't even put it on your product as it's just guaranteed.
Yeah.
You're gonna need it.
Yeah. So the reason I say technology is fabric of the universe is because a lot of these technologies make life simpler and easier. It reduces the lot of friction that is caused in life by different things that we do, even now, which leads for us to be able to kind of adapt it pretty fast.
I don't know if I've ever heard you say the fabric of the universe. I feel like that's like a really cool show, like title or something like that. Technology is the fabric of the universe. But when I hear that, what I think, Nav, is it's circular, right? So you hear a lot about data centers coming online, the energy needs of this. India wants to do X with their population. All these countries, like, we're talking about the amount of energy it's going to require for technology to do what it's going to do for us, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's a relationship that you and your team, your leadership team here at CNX is right in the middle of, as far as, hey, how do we provide clean power for data centers? How do we make sure the data centers scale over the next 4 or 5 years? And how does the United States in general have the upper hand there? So we know we've got good, clean, cheap energy.
Yeah.
And how do we get it to the right places? So is that something y'all are working on and seeing as an emerging trend as well?
Absolutely, yeah. That's what we are trying to do at CNX here. So we are trying to work on every aspect of the energy industry. So the first one was the carbon, right? So minimizing the carbon footprint of of the product that we have, which is natural gas at this point in time. And then second part is being able to work on sustainability of what we produce.
Right.
So CNX has started this radical transparency initiative where we are gathering all the data from which technology again is helping us gather, and then we put it on our technology RT radical transparency website, so that way everyone can see what the numbers are, and
right.
they can make their own
the
conclusion.
purpose of that is to dispel loosely based, white papers and things like that around the energy and its hazardous effects. It's like, hey, you know what? We'll go put the monitors right next door to our operation, stream that data live to the public. We'll stream it straight to the DEP here in the state and whoever else wants it, and you make your decision. Data doesn't lie, right?
Exactly, yeah. And then like I have one of this fundamental saying in every operations I worked in or ran was, we believe in God, and everyone else bring data.
Bring data.
So
Trust in God.
Yeah, we trust in God, and everyone else bring data.
That's right.
And so that's why data is important. Otherwise, as a company, like, we are not around here to counter anyone's opinion just by giving our opinion.
Right.
We are here to show them this is the data, like this is what our analysis is, and you can take this data and analyze that data yourself to come to your conclusions on what is right and what is wrong, rather than believing in someone's opinion, right? Because one of the things technology has done is it's given every person a mouthpiece through podcasts and YouTube, and so a lot of the opinions are not validated by data, and that's our initiative to kind of change that.
Right. Well, it's a great project for sure. OpSite will be a part of that project here shortly, and being a part of monitoring that data and connecting the dots, 24/7, reacting to that data, what's it telling us, and continuing to, keep CNX at the top tier as far as sustainability and things like that go.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that application of that data into operations is also one of the key things that we are trying to do here, right? Especially with OpSite. So my approach to operations or anything else in life is always focus on the fundamentals, because fundamentals are one thing which stay constant throughout the universe. Gravity is gravity no matter which universe, which planet you're in, right?
Well,
Physics,
it could change
chemistry,
from planet to planet,
it,
depending on
it
how big it
changes,
is,
but the
right?
concept of gravity is
Right.
always there. So you cannot change gravity as long as you can measure it there. So so two things, right? Uh, Fundamentals of science, physics, chemistry, uh, biology, all of that stay constant, and then time. So like, and what technology has enabled us is be able to solve all our physics and chemistry problems at a really small time scale. So what do I mean by that? So in 24 hours, there are 1440 minutes.
Right.
So before, like, we didn't have the ability to collect data for all 1440 minutes, right? In the 80s. So we everyone went to the well once a day, took the readings and came back, right? If there was issue, you would do it twice a day. But now we can get data almost 86,400 times a day, right? Which is per second almost, or even
Right.
sometimes more than that. So now with all that data available, 86,400 data points in a day, we have to solve that. So now with AI and machine learning, we can solve that at a very fast rate. So so if you do the differential, like like going a little bit
Yeah, that's
nerdy
fine.
here,
Let's get in there in the weeds. Come on.
going a little bit nerdy here with that. So if you do a differential equation over solving it from, like, 12 zero, like 00 hours to the 24 hours, right, and solve for every data point there, you will be able to see trends which we never were able to see. So once we see that trends, once we can mine that data, you can solve that problems faster than we ever were able to do before.
Yep.
So with faster solution, you are more productive, right? The wells are more productive. We produce more gas. We have less downtime. We have less emissions of fugitive emissions anywhere in our system, and that is where AI, ML, and what we are trying to do with OpSite is going to get us there.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. I'm glad you're kind of pulling into your tool bag here, giving us the rule of thumbs and things like that. I'd like to kind of like shift a little bit and talk about leadership. As you've been a leader for me for many years. You're in a current leadership role. You've been in many vice president roles. You name it. From a technical standpoint, more than most, I would believe. But what I'm looking for here is when it comes to technology adoption, if you don't have the big stick like you do currently, like what can leadership do to foster that culture of innovation, of acceptance? How do we digitally transform things when the culture won't allow for it? Does it always start at the top? Can it start at the bottom? Like, what is the best experience? And in your view, how big a piece is culture? And as a leader, how do you drive the changes that you're trying to see?
Uh, so that's a really good question, Jeff. On leadership, I think leadership is a 360-degree view for me, right? What I mean by that, to me, as a leader, my job is to empower everyone in the organization to be a leader. So my job is to create more leaders, right? In their own right, because everyone is a leader. Like, if someone has, even their individual contributors, like an engineer, they have their own project, they're working with their own team. So they have to be the leader of their part, right? And then everyone is solving for a different thing in their leadership roles,
Right.
right? So that's why it's a 360-degree, uh, you know,
So
skill set.
empowerment, feedback, honesty,
On
integrity, all those things drive the culture.
Yeah,
And if you're trying to implement a new technology, well, what if you have, Joe Blow that's from the 80s
yeah,
that remembers doing it that way, and maybe it's not a better way, but it's easier for him.
yeah.
It's not a new process he has to learn, or he or she has to learn. Like, there's always going to be those standouts. How do you deal with those people that have a voice in your organization
Yeah.
that are kind of not going down that path.
Yeah.
I mean, other than short of making them exit stage left really quick. Like,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that? How do you bring them to the table?
So one of the key things that culture, you know, culture is the key thing in any organization, and that's my job mostly. My job is not doing anything technical, but building the culture so everyone else can do their part like easily. Uh, and so building a culture means reducing friction in teams and how any work is is executed, right? So my if there's a friction in a workflow and it's not corrected, then it comes to me, right? That's what my job is. So to look at leadership and creating the culture, culture is like very different layers, right? So one of the key things in culture is creating trust in everyone. So how do you create trust? So um, so first goal is creating a culture of transparency. So where everything is on the table, right? Like all the data is shared, everything is shared, and once that comes in, like once transparency is built into the organization, people don't have any fear of sharing.
Right.
They're always creating
so
that.
let's break down trust real quick because
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of what you're saying here, especially like if you look at like Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. It's like the core of
Cool.
it is trust, and some people might think Nav's talking about trust as far as, hey, Nav, can you pick me up from work this 5 o'clock? And he says, oh yeah, I'll be there. I'm probably going to trust that he's going to do that, or hey, can you send this email to so and so, whatever kind of things like that. You trust from a professional relationship that that's going to happen. What you're talking about is, hey, if I say something, if I ask a dumb question in a meeting, that I'm trusting my peers not to kind of like, make a scene of it, et cetera. So that culture's hard because trust is, everyone's really a human being. They're out for their own. They're out for their own team. They're out for their own self, their own family, the whole nine. But trusting people that you can give information back and forth, you can be vulnerable, is really where that starts.
Yeah.
And fostering that vulnerability through the organization is very difficult sometimes. There's some hard heads out there, right?
Yeah. And so that's why to create that culture, you have to break it down into different layers. So for me, the first layer of building the culture is creating the culture of transparency, so where everything is out there. And then second layer is once you have all the data, everything's transparent, then creating culture of learning.
Okay.
Right? So that way, everything that's out there, if someone made a mistake, we don't focus on the person who made the mistake. We focus on the data that came out from the mistake and trying to figure out what can we learn from this. So our next iteration is better than before, right? Nothing is perfect in life, and we iterate to kind of come to the best solution, right? As history has shown,
Right.
mankind.
I got you. Okay.
Right. And then the third layer of that culture, building the culture, is building the culture of coaching. So everyone becomes a learner and a coach at the same time. So if you see someone making a mistake, you don't pounce on them and say, oh, like, why did you do this? You say, okay, it's a coaching moment, right? So you coach that.
Gotcha.
And once you have these three things layered, then as a business, we need to kind of create a culture of gratitude. We should be thankful for someone making a mistake, so the whole organization learns from it. We got to be thankful to make to someone who's coaching other people, right? So that then everyone's becoming a leader, right? That's where creating these different layers of culture is important.
That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, and I do want to kind of pivot here a little bit. I've got a couple questions to ask you as we wrap on time, but you've got a couple of young sons in college and getting ready to go to college. Let me ask you this: if you were going to give advice to young professionals entering the industry today, it looks a lot different than when you graduated from University of Texas. So what would you tell that UT grad going into engineering? Would you tell them to stay away from it? Would you tell them to jump in with both feet? Like, what is your advice for the new professionals entering the industry?
I think this industry is the key to the world economy. Like, if you look at history of mankind, everything started with fire, right?
Right.
So energy is the key thing to development of civilization. And as our civilization becomes bigger and becomes, multiplanetary, like the demand and need for energy will be there. the kind might change. So my advice to anyone entering engineering or the energy industry would be, you are doing the right thing. And energy is the fundamental to human race and to civilization.
Yeah,
So,
couldn't agree more. Right. I mean, people are still burning wood to stay alive.
Yep.
Even this day. I mean, it's maybe only 5% of the energy mix, but dung and things like that still exist. We've never retired an energy source once we started using it in the history of mankind, including burning wood. At least, a big portion of the world still uses that to stay warm.
Yeah. And the second part is energy is fundamental to civilization. So now, as a human race gets to the next level in civilization, we have to be very prudent on how efficiently that energy is used. We have to reduce waste. So that's where technology development, AI, everything else comes into play. All right.
Well, yeah, you're hitting on the points. I'm kind of a futurist, and definitely you are too, Nav. I'm very excited about what the future brings. All the time, I've got young children too that ask me over the years, like, are you worried about this? Are you worried about that? And I'm like, absolutely not, because we're right on the cusp of something great technology-wise. And if we go back and look at, you said energy is the foundation of civilization and everything else. Well, the next thing is data, because up until about 5,000 years ago, the human race, literally when someone died, everything they knew went with them.
Yeah.
And then they started writing things down, right? And they started writing songs and doing poetry. And that was 5,000 years ago. And then fast forward to, hey, now we know what people did. They've got, the internet. AI is that next piece that takes everything that everyone knows and puts it into one bucket. And so the opportunities are seemingly endless, not just for this industry, but in every other application in the world, health, things like that. And, I tell my kids all the time, I think y'all are going to live to be at least 120, 130 years old. Like, if you don't, it's probably because something bad happened. But I do believe they will get off this planet too within our lifetime. So, definitely a futurist from that perspective. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. And I think the opportunity with data is growing exponentially every day.
Yeah.
Because look at the amount of data we are collected and we haven't been able to analyze.
Right.
So that is going to be the future for them. So
it's exciting.
Yeah,
and
it's
exciting.
really exciting.
It requires energy. It requires, mining, all these sort of things. So we're excited here at OpSite Energy to be a small piece of that to start, and lend our expertise around these problems and formulate solutions. And we're glad that you're here to join us to talk about that today, Nav. Anything you want to give us as far as a closing remark as we come out of this?
Yeah, like I first of all wanted to thank you and Mike and Todd for this podcast and for being CNX's partner in the future of data analysis and real time data gathering and operations control room. I'm really looking forward to our collaboration over the coming years, and I believe that you guys will bring innovation to the next level. Right. Yeah, and this part of the industry has been a little stagnant, hasn't evolved as much. But with the three of you coming together and helping, working with CNX, I think we can really take it to the next level, which is the quantum leap. The industry is looking for.
I'll tell you what, we're excited about it, guys, and we're excited you were able to join us today. Navneet, we appreciate your time this morning. Don't forget to hit that like or subscribe if you like what you're hearing today, and we'll be back with the next episode before you know it.